Okay, that little box, click on that little box.
Okay, I'm not quite ready yet. I don't like to do the slightest. That helped a little. Yeah, still
So
no
now
breath.
click on that box up there.
When you say box, you mean right
Yeah,
there?
that one, the square. There you are.
Okay, so it's 5:25, so nobody's in there.
Yeah, there's people already up
Is that it? Am I there?
there. Okay, now here's the mute button. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Are we on? Are we live here?
I don't know. Hello?
Hi,
Hello.
you're connected. We'll get started in just a couple of minutes.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so if you want to mute, then you
I know.
push on that.
I know.
Okay.
You got I click.
Hmm?
I click or I push the screen.
No, you click on the mute. First, you have to click here to see the mute button.
Okay. All right. I think I'm set.
Okay, well, let's let it get started.
Hi, Darcy. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, thank you.
can hear you just fine.
Okay. Well, last time nobody could hear me, so
I know I had that happen. I was on one meeting, switched to another, and then they couldn't hear anything I said, even though it was not muted.
yeah, it gets kind of frustrating.
Yeah, exactly.
It should be now.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you want to see more people in that area.
Are you going to call Jeff?
Mm-hmm.
Pretty interesting conversation you guys are having. That's Darcy's. That's her RV. Darcy's RV.
Could be.
That's what it looks like. Yeah, I bet you she's down at the side. Yeah, I can't hear you. Jeff decided. It's just Nelson.
Mhm. We'll talk for a second.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, something might happen, but good to have you here in case there's a glitch of some sort.
Mhm.
Like, I don't know what this is. What's this BW? Here's the names of the people. Oh, he's trying to come on, I bet.
Yeah. Mhm. That's it. And he's getting on right there.
Interesting. That's live. He's not in the Dalles.
No, that's a different person. Do you mind if I do this?
No, go ahead.
Harold, let's see who else is there. Oh, Beaver just got on, but he's not showing his face. So if you or something, see that stop video right there?
Mhm.
You click on that and then you won't be seen. You'll be like these people.
Hmm. Okay.
That's what I do in church when I'm gonna like unload the dishwasher while I'm listening to church. But in order to see that, you're gonna have to click on this, see?
I believe we're on YouTube, but I have to say you're looking very tropical, Mr. Cronin.
Thank you, sir. Feeling a little bit of a need for some warmth and beach. It feels like it's been forever. Thank you.
Is that a screensaver or is he really someone else?
Couldn't tell.
Wow, for people to get on,
Yeah.
not even 5:30.
Yeah, 5:20. I know.
And usually you don't even end up putting the ID password. I do with Connie, but at any of these meetings, I do just kind of.
So stop video. Makes it like
Makes it black.
Okay.
And
and then just
then practice.
no.
Now she's coming.
Yeah, it's just 5:30 right now. She's
Mm,
share.
mm, mhm. Is that she right there?
Yeah, her name's-
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the hour is upon us to begin the Columbia Gateway Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee meeting. I would like to remind you all to please stay muted during the presentations, and certainly remember to unmute when it's time to address questions or input.
Need to mute.
So with that, I would ask for a roll call. Paula.
Good, close.
Joe Barcott,
Here.
Stacy Coburn,
Here.
Mike Cronin,
Here.
Tracy Dujic,
Here.
Forrest Ercole,
Here.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Deborah Ferrer,
Here.
John Frederick. Absent. Gary Grossman,
Here.
Sandy Hagerl,
Here.
Steve Kramer.
Here.
Thank you. Darcy Long Curtis,
Here.
Tim McLaughlin,
Here. Here.
Dean Meyerson. Absent. Doug Nelson,
Here.
Dan Richardson,
Present.
Leon Serber. Absent, and Ben Ring.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, our first item of business this evening is to elect a chair and a secretary for the budget committee for the process of conducting the hearings. We would certainly hope to get through this tonight, but if not, we would be booking subsequent meetings this week. So just make mention of that. I would say that Darcy Long Curtis chaired the budget committee last year. She did an excellent job, but I will open for nominations for chair of the budget committee.
I would nominate Darcy.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Do I have any other nominations? If not, all those in favor signify by a thumbs up so that we get a visual of our voting. There, thank you, team. So with that, Darcy, I will turn it over to you for election of secretary.
Excuse me, Chair Lon Curtis.
Yes.
We need either people to respond verbally to the vote or show their thumb on their video, because the little thumb up doesn't record. The little
Okay.
button, it
Mhm.
won't record for the record.
Okay.
So Forrest, are you in favor?
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate your faith in me. So let's go ahead and open the meeting and elect a secretary. Are there any nominations for secretary of the group? I point out this is mostly a ceremonial duty. You just have to come in and sign the final ones. You don't actually have to take any minutes or anything else. So,
Yeah,
super easy.
Madam Chair, I'll go ahead and nominate Tracy. Smile,
All right,
Tracy.
we have a nomination for Tracy.
And I'll second that.
Are there-
This is McLaughlin, Councilor McLaughlin.
All right, are there any, we have a first and a second. Are there any other nominations? I'm going to go ahead and close the nominations. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, who is saying aye?
Forrest.
And
Thank you.
Barcott.
Thank you. May I ask who's here now is Galaxy J7?
This is Dean Meyerson.
Thank
Oh.
you.
Great. Okay, so Tracy's our secretary. Next is our budget officer's message. And I believe that is being presented by Angie. Is that correct?
Chair, it will be presented by me, Alice Cannon, the Urban Renewal Manager, and I'm the newest member of this
Sorry.
team, and so I'm going to have here Angie as my very able and capable support, and I will lean on her because she has the history, and so do the rest of you who are on the Urban Renewal Board. But I want to introduce myself to those of you who don't know me, and there are many of you who I don't know yet. I've been with the City of the Dalles since August, so I'm about 8 months in, and I've been enjoying it a lot so far. I started out temporary and decided I liked it so much that I came on permanent. So I'm really pleased to be on this team and pleased to be leading this agency. I bring about 25 years of public sector experience. Most of that has been working in or around urban renewal programs. I've led 2 other urban renewal agencies prior to coming to the Dalles, one in Gresham and one in Tualatin. So I have some experiences, though I have never done, I've never had a budget committee quite this large, and I've never been through a budget process here in the Dalles. So I would lean on you and your history. So feel free to raise any questions, but those of you who have history that I don't, also feel free to weigh in. I would welcome that. I do have a PowerPoint presentation tonight, so I'm going to start sharing a screen here, and that will be right now. Let me get the slideshow going here. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, so here's the budget message. I had the wonderful opportunity to take a really nice photo off of the roof of the Gator building, and then I messed around with it a little bit, as you can see here. But so this is a current photo, and it was right after one of the snowstorms. So you'll see the snow up on the hills there. So it's a nice view of 2nd Street and all the nice improvements we've made. So I think it's important to remind everyone why we're here. The mission statement of Urban Renewal. Why was this agency formed back in 1990? It is to eliminate blight and depreciating property values within the jurisdiction of the agency, and in the process, attract aesthetically pleasing, jobs producing private investments that will stabilize or increase property values and protect the area's historic places and values. I read that, I'm not going to read this whole presentation, but I read that one just so it's fresh in your mind. And we should always be able to answer every meeting that we have why we're here. And this is our mission statement. These are the boundaries of our agency, and it's primarily focused around the downtown, though it does go under the freeway along 2nd Street. There are some properties, and then also some properties on the south side of the freeway near, well, some of you will be able to tell me what street that is, but anyway, there are some properties right in this location that you can see. So, you can tell that I put an arrow there where there is where City Hall is located, just for reference purposes. All right. So the history, we've been in business here as an urban renewal agency since 1990. The original plan was adopted then, and there have been a few amendments along the way. And the size, I believe the size of the boundaries were increased, and I think it was reduced. But in any event, in 1999, that was the point where the city, by state law, the agency was required to, all agencies in the state were required to adopt what's called a maximum indebtedness. So in other words, this is the amount of money that we're going to work with during the period of the agency's life. That was adopted in 1999 to be 14.23 million. And then in 2009, it was bumped up to $29.13 million. And that was in addition to adding some projects to the list. So one of the things was very important to me as a new director, but I also think it's been helpful to our board, is we completed a financial update in January of this year. And really what I wanted to accomplish out of that was to understand how much money do we have left, where are we, what are our revenue expectations in the coming time that we have. And as I mentioned earlier, we have 29.12 million as our cap or a maximum indebtedness. And we've spent about 79% of that, and that's 22 million, or about 23 million. So what that leaves us is 6.25 million remaining. We have a current cash balance of about $3.75 million, which leaves us about 10 million remaining for our projects for the remainder of our time. Just so you know, for reference, on the indebtedness or the debt that we currently have issued, we're scheduled to pay that off in 2029. So we have a few years left in the life of this agency and some money to work with. So this was important to me. This gave me a snapshot so that we could begin in the coming months here a strategic planning process for how we want to move forward with these remaining funds and what are our goals. So that's a snapshot. Our budget is composed of two funds, and the first fund is that is listed in your budget book is the Capital Projects Fund. And this is really our operating fund. I guess that's the best way I can call it, although it is a capital projects fund, but it's what the Urban Renewal Program uses to fund projects, staffing, and consulting needs. So I had a meeting with the Urban Renewal Board. Our March meeting, we dispensed with doing it on our regular date to give me a little bit more time to formulate these goals, and I appreciated that. So we met just last week. And what I wanted to do is to get, before this budget meeting, was to get some concurrence from our board about what our goals are for this coming year. And I think we already knew we have a lot of projects already underway, but I wanted to get it in writing so that we could articulate it here, and it would be something that we could say that the board had endorsed. So of course, we are continuing the program, and this program will fund administrative and technical services to further the goals of the Urban Renewal Agency. A project that's been around a long, long time, and in a variety of different iterations has been this First Street Riverfront Connection Project. And at one time, it included a connection to the Lewis and Clark Festival Park. You can see my cursor moving there, that had an undercrossing under the railroad that would extend into a plaza space that would have been at between 1st and 2nd on Washington Street. That portion was the Urban Renewal Board removed that section of the project, and I think it was very difficult. It wasn't as feasible as it could have been in working with the railroad and with ODOT. So that was removed. And so the current boundaries of that project are from Union Street along First to Laughlin. And that's the current extent of the project. We're pretty far along. We have about 75% design, and our goal here is to complete the engineering, the right-of-way acquisition phase, and then also prepare bid documents. And we want to be under construction and completed in calendar year 2023. So in about 2 years, we'll be wrapped up. And why so long, you might be asking? Because we have federal money, and there are a lot of strings attached to federal money, and that just leads to more need for more collaboration with ODOT and other agencies. And so that takes a little bit more time, but I guess I'm not gonna be critical. We do have some good grant money coming in for this project to support it. So another goal of the agency that has been a topic of discussion in recent months has been the agency-owned building, the Tony's building here, located at the northeast corner of 2nd and Federal. There has been, in 2020, there was a lot of discussion about, in fact, the agency in late 2019 had decided to enter into a exclusive negotiating agreement with a local group here, the Gorge Fitness LLC, the Gorge Fitness Hub LLC, to consider using this building for some fitness activities, variety of different fitness related vendors. That ended up not being a successful negotiation. There are no hard feelings, at least I don't sense those. It's just, this is a very expensive building with a lot of repairs needed, and we were just not able to get to a successful resolution in that negotiation. And I would also, I think everyone can attest to the fact that fitness uses are risky in this particular time with COVID underway. So I know there weren't any hard feelings between both parties. We just decided to go our separate ways. So with that, the board has given direction to me and the staff here to initiate demolition of this building to make way for a development-ready site in downtown. And so this is a variation than some of the other efforts we've had on this property, and also on the block that includes the Granada Theater and the Last Stop Saloon. We're going to take a first step here. We're going to subsidize this portion of the project, which would be the demolition of the building, with the idea that it will be more attractive for private redevelopment and maybe more feasible once the building is down and ready to go for development. And what are we going to do with the building? We don't know yet. Our plan would be, once the demolition has occurred, we would offer it up to a public-private redevelopment opportunity through maybe a request for proposal to create some new housing and commercial space in downtown. Another important goal, and I've already had a comment from one of the board members here, budget committee members here, is that we're not doing the best job of marketing our current grant and loan programs. I can speak to that because I hardly know much about these programs, and it is a goal of mine and a goal of this board to refresh our current programs, take another look at those, make sure that the programs are designed in a manner and give the incentives in a manner that would result in change and result in the kind of investment that we're looking for in our agency. We also need to do, when I look at these graphics, this looks like it was designed in 1995 or something. So I want to do a better job. I'm not being critical of anyone, I hope, that might have designed these, but I want to bring these up to date a little bit and have them appear more prominently on our website and so forth. So we'll be doing some more work on that. And then we need to look at some other incentives. Are there other tools in the toolbox that other agencies have to incent development of new housing units in the downtown. That's a goal of our agency. We have a project underway. It's gotten a little bit behind schedule due to COVID. Mr. Carpenter and Ms. McQuaid are the developers, and I've got my cursor pointing over here to the building to the west, and that is the Last Stop Saloon. They own that building, and they are the selected developer of this recreation building site that includes 3 storefronts. We had a very productive meeting recently, staff did, to review their schedule, their current schedule, and they're going to try to get back on track and have 2 of the storefronts here that I'm outlining with my cursor there to be open and hopefully operational, or with the ability to have tenants in it by the end of this calendar year. So they're well underway, and I feel pretty confident that they're going to be able to make some good progress. This had always intended to be another phase, so we're still, the developer, Mr. Carpenter, Ms. McQuaid, are on tap to give us a plan for how they plan to use this 3rd storefront and the space that's associated with it. So we'll hear more about that in the coming months. But more than anything, I think everyone's going to be excited about seeing some change to this part of the downtown. We have 3 loans or grants. I guess they're loans that are underway. The Honnold building, the Gayer building, and the Commodore 2. These 2 loans, the Honnold and the Gayer buildings, they have what's called an interest payback arrangement, where they have a loan for the improvements that they made. We have an agreement, I think, at least on the Gayer building, I know that in 2025, we'll pay the interest on those loans. As an urban renewal agency, we buy back the interest, so to speak. We pay that back. We pay it on behalf of the developer or the person, the entity who obtained the loan. We pay that, and I think it's through 2025 for the Gayer building. I'm not sure about the Honnold building. Commodore 2 is it's a straight up, that's a loan, and that I think it's the same arrangement there in that balloon payment. We actually did make a sizable loan on that property, and in 2026, that property owner will be on the hook to repay about $270,000. So those are 3 projects that are outstanding. There have been in prior years loans granted, and then they've been paid off. So there's been a lot of that over the years, but these are the 3 remaining. And then I already talked about strategic planning, but I hope in the late spring or summer, we want to be doing the strategic planning to really guide the last years. We have about 21% left of our money left to do some good work for our agency. And with that, we want to make sure we plan our efforts well and have some goals that I'm a very goal-oriented professional, and I like to know where I'm going all the time. So I'm going to be asking and checking in a lot with everyone to make sure that we're staying on track, and that I'm meeting the goals that you set as an agency, but also we're spending our money wisely. So with that, this is really the portion of the budget that Angie Wilson, our finance director, manages. It's our debt service fund. This fund collects all of our property tax revenue. So all the revenue comes into this fund first, and then the remaining funds after debt is paid. And we also maintain a coverage, a certain amount of reserve to cover in the event of some unforeseen circumstance. We make sure that we have enough funds remaining in that fund at all times to cover some additional payments in the event of a unforeseen financial situation. So Angie, do you want to add anything to this slide or anything?
I think the only thing that I would like to add is the reserve for the future debt payment is always just one payment that we reserve for the future on the debt service fund. And the way the property tax and the interest, the property tax goes there first to the debt service fund. And once that payment's met, and then the remaining property tax revenue goes into the operating fund.
So with that, Chair, I'm ready to answer any questions that you might have about the budget document itself. As you noticed, I didn't spend much time on numbers with this PowerPoint. I really wanted to orient you all to the big picture of urban renewal. And since I'm new to many of you, wanted you to also have an opportunity to get to know me. My brain thinks a lot in big picture. Numbers are sometimes more of a challenge, so I might need Angie's help. But in terms of, I'm happy, both of us are happy to run through any questions you might have about any of the pages inside this budget book that you've received. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing the screen unless you all have questions about anything on this slideshow. So let's see. How do I stop sharing? Do you still see my screen or?
Yeah, your screen is still there.
Okay.
I believe down at the bottom, Alice, you could just hit the button and it gives you the option to stop sharing. Or up at the top where it says view options, maybe.
Okay, here we go. No. How do I stop share? Stop.
It's off now, Alice.
It's gone. You got it.
Okay, great. So I'll entertain any questions, and Chair, I'll turn it over to you.
I'm not hearing any questions or seeing any hands raised, so
Oh, I have one question.
Got all
Forrest?
kinds of them.
go ahead, Forrest.
On last year's approved budget, I know we had mentioned in the funds that we might possibly pay off the debt 4 years early instead of in 2029, it would be 2025. Was that just dropped altogether, or is that still an option?
I did see a note about that. I lacked the history of that. I saw a note about that in some previous documents, but I don't know the history of it. What I did see underneath the note that I read was that we were not able to do that last year, but I don't know if that's accurate. So I'll turn that over to Angie or others that might have the recollection of that.
I believe that was something that the committee was talking about doing, is paying the debt off earlier, but I haven't attended a lot of those urban renewal meetings. So maybe Darcy, you maybe have the answer to that? Or
Yeah,
Stacey?
I was just going to say that we haven't discussed it on an agenda, and the committee has not decided to go forward with that at this point. That's why it's not in the budget. But Chair Grossman, do you know something about if it might come before us this year?
No particular plan as to whether or not we could do it. That could be done, but I think the current plan is to go through our project lists and to see what we have in front of us before we make some kind of a debt reduction decision.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, did that answer your question? Okay, great. Mayor Mays? I see you have a hand raised.
Thank you, Ms. Chair. Alice, I was wondering if you could talk about the relationship between the Tony's demolition and future development and a project I've been plugging for since I was elected mayor, and that is the Federal Street Plaza. Could you enlighten us as to the relationship between the Tony's redevelopment and that plaza, and whether or not there's any plans to fund that for fiscal 22?
Mayor, thank you for the question. I have not had a lot of conversations formally with either the city council or this board, the agency board, about that project. The last time that project was discussed was in July of 2020, and it was my predecessor, Steve Harris, was the staff member who was leading that discussion with the council. And as I understood it at that time, the sentiment of the council was expressed that we needed to make, we wanted to make sure, at least there were some members that wanted to make sure that we properly sequenced that project against the other priorities we had. We had the First Street project that's been underway. We've had the federal money since 2007, 2008, and need to make some progress on that. Let's move forward. Let's make that first priority. And then just some recognition that the Tony's building is also underway. So maybe in terms of the sequence, the First Street is first, Tony's building, and then let's begin at some point some discussion about that Federal Street project. And I can tell you from a very practical standpoint and from a staff capacity standpoint, the projects that we have on the list today are what I think we can accomplish this fiscal year. Adding the Federal Street Plaza, it could be added. It would need to be sequenced behind those other two because there will be need for construction area that's set aside, staging area, and then also just there's going to be a need to occupy that space when the Tony's building is underway, and also traffic will probably be redirected when First Street is underway. So I think that's been the practical reality, but there has been no board discussion and the city council discussion I wasn't present for. I only watched the video of the July city council meeting.
Other questions?
This may have already been answered, but is there a goal for commencement of demolition of the Tony's building, in terms of when it might begin?
I don't have a timeline at this point. I wish I did. We are actually, one of my staff members and I are meeting tomorrow. We're going to see if we can get some grant funding. I'm not sure that we can. I don't think the rest of the board knows this, but I'm going to see if there is some funding available to assist with the demolition. And if it's money that we can access quickly, then I'd like to see if we can do that. If it's going to take too long, then I'll need the board to give me some direction on what they want me to do. But I'd like to get moving as soon as possible. Some of the first steps that would need to be, we need to do some more research on, but also it's going to help a lot to accomplish before demolition would be any cleanup, asbestos abatement, as well as we do have a storage tank that's associated with this property. We would want to get that cleaned up as well. So there's some environmental work to do. So I'm in the process of figuring out the proper sequence and how we would contract that to get it done. I want to get it done expeditiously, but I also want to save money. So that's important to me as well. So if we can get some grant money, and then the question I have in my mind, I don't have an answer quite yet, is it cheaper for us to do the abatement, the environmental work first before we bid it out for the demolition? I don't know the answer, but I'm in the process of trying to figure that out. So.
Thank you.
So my goal would be sometime in the summer. I don't want to overpromise here, but that would be my goal.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. Okay, Doug Nelson.
I have a couple of simple budget questions on page 7, just the difference between what was approved and what is proposed. One is for the property tax current has dropped about 130,000. I guess that would be for Angie. And then scrolling down to contract administrative services, it jumped from about 85 to 120,000. So I'm just curious the changes in those two.
The property taxes, I can answer that pretty easy. That comes from Wasco County, and we just go off of the assessment, off the SAL report, which is the SAL report is the special assessment report that is proposed for what they think that we'll receive for that year. So that's where those taxes came from. And you can also see that, 721,000 doesn't look like it's very much, but I just want to remind you also that that is only a partial part of that. The other part is on the debt service page. Like I mentioned earlier, where you get the debt service gets funded first, and then it goes over into this fund. And then on the contractual administrative services, Alice, I think this is a number that came from you. So if you want to go ahead and answer that, that would.
Yes. Yeah, happy to do so. When I looked at the amount of time that was budgeted last fiscal year, or the lack of time that was budgeted, I'm billing more I'm spending more time. Staff is spending more time on urban renewal than was previously budgeted last year, and we're going to do that. I would really ask for your support to spend time, because I think the time is short, and you have some goals for us to deliver projects. And so we need some more funds to get the work done. I can tell you that my workload is heavy. It's a very heavy workload. I not only manage the Urban Renewal Agency, but I manage the planning program as well. I have a great staff, and that's wonderful. However, we need to spend more time on this program. And so what does that look like? It looks like we're going to spend more time at the staff level, from 84,000 to 120. And I think that's realistic. I evaluated that pretty closely with the trends of the past few months. And then also, if you go down, you didn't ask about this line item, but I'll answer it anyway. If you go down to the urban renewal the consulting line, you'll see that I am proposing some project consultants. So real estate development consultant to assist with the Tony's building redevelopment. There are areas here that even with my vast professional background, I don't have all of the tuned in. I don't know everything I need to know about the public-private development. In years past, when I've needed help, I've gone out and sought consultants. What I need, what I'm proposing to have funded, would be someone who could not only provide advice and assistance, but could also carry up that project, and who would have the expertise to move it along efficiently, and not a lot of stops and starts. That's the struggle I have today, is the stops and the starts. And then you'll also notice down below that there is a capital project management consultant. That consultant is for the First Street project. I've hired somebody it's a consulting firm out of Bend that is helping with that project. And I'll tell you, it's been moving right along with their assistance. I'm pleased about that partnership, particularly because we have ODOT involved. And previous to having this consultant on board, we just suffered from stops and starts on this project, and it was just not able to gain any momentum. So that's really what that's about. I thought long and hard about this, but I feel like what I've heard from the board to date has been, let's get going, let's get moving, let's work on some goals. And this is what I think we need to put in the budget to accomplish that.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Mr. Nelson, I did want to just kind of bring up the contract admin services. Those are, it's an estimated amount. So it is, everybody does a time card, and those are hours spent. So if that's just an estimate, so it could realistically be, much smaller than that. It just goes by how many hours that are actually spent. So it's not just taken out of the budget and put into the city's budget. It's just, we do a billing every month on that.
Thank you.
Okay,
May I-
so what I'd like to do is see if
Can I
there are
ask
any
a-
more high-level questions. And
I have one.
then what I'd like to do, yes, I will come back for what I want to do is ask high-level questions about the projects. And then I would like us to go over pages 7 and 8. And then that will give you a chance to ask specific questions about each of those areas, Mr. Nelson just did, but that'll help us stay in order, make sure we cover everything, because we just want to make sure we feel like we've gone through the whole budget and nothing just got slipped through. But we'll also go at a pretty fast pace unless there's specific questions. So was that Mr. Kramer asking to speak?
It was
Yes.
Dean Reardon.
Okay, go
Well-
ahead.
My question was on page 8, if you want to do that later.
Yes, I do want to do that later. And there were several people with their hands up. So Steve, did you have a question?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. One piece on the agenda. I think that I would like to indulge us all to have public comment before we go to budget committee discussion. That way we have any public comment that we can put into our discussion rather than going back and revisiting that. That's just a point of order. The other one, I would like to know, because I see some new faces this evening, and could somebody maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe I missed a meeting where we appointed these individuals to our budget committee. And if somebody could maybe educate me on that, where our new members came from.
They're appointed by the mayor and approved by the city council.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Not the agency. Thank you very much. And then also then on page 1, it's just, I'm sure it's an inadvertent miss, but one of our governing boards, Wasco County, was excluded. And then some of the other questions that I did have already been raised and answered. And thank you for the time, Madam Chair.
And Committee
Dan
Member
Richardson.
Kramer, I apologize for that that miss. That was a miss. It wasn't intentional.
Thank you, Madam
Okay,
Chair.
Dan Richardson.
Thank you, Madam
What-
Chair.
What was the miss? What's missing, if I may ask?
Wasco County wasn't on the list of
Okay.
agencies.
Yeah, so on page 1, there are some bullets under the paragraph that begins with background, and it says the governing board for the agency is called the Urban Renewal Agency Board, is composed of 3 council members, a member each of the governing boards of the Fire and Rescue, Parks and Rec, Port of the Dalles, and of course the county should be in there, but they aren't. So I apologize for that miss.
Okay, Dan, you wanna?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm 2 quick comments. I hope these are high level enough to be appropriate. One is a comment. Actually, both of these are to Ms. Cannon. One is that I would encourage you under goal 5 when you're talking about refreshing the urban renewal marketing, and then under goal 4 to consider redevelopment opportunities. Please avail yourself of the fact that this is a small town and there are people that are readily available who are building owners and have undergone to work on or attempt to work on redeveloping their second stories downtown in recent years. Anyway, I just encourage you to chat with them and see what they could do with regard to spelling out what might be current sort of disincentives in place that we could remedy or discuss. So that's one comment, is to talk to some of the downtown business owners or building owners rather about second floor renovation when it comes to the appropriate time. The second one is just to follow up on Mayor May's question or comments about the Federal Plaza. I would just note that we have plans and designs for that. So we're fairly far along with that potential project. And I would ask us to seriously look at maybe sequencing the plaza after Tony's, but before First Street. Tony's, we might be confident could be done this summer with the demolition. First Street, it's a long ways down the horizon, and it's been a long time coming. And I just feel like we could maybe at least have a discussion about slipping the plaza project in there. It's a pretty modest size of project by comparison. We know more or less the cost. We own the property. Anyway, I feel it could be low-hanging fruit. Thank you.
So I'll just address that, Mr. Richardson. So one of the reasons is that First Street Plaza has timelines on it and federal money that has to go back. That's why we're prioritizing it. It has been such a long time. We've had to have multiple extensions. The the second piece of that would be the Tonys just trying to figure out what is actually going to happen there. It doesn't necessarily have to be completed, but we decided, both the city council and urban renewal talked about figuring out what is going to happen there before we do something with Federal Street in case it impacts it. And it's the bigger project. So that's the reason for the timing. If that
Understood.
answers
Thank
the
you. That
question.
makes good sense.
Yeah. Other high level questions before we jump into the specific dollar amounts? Okay, I don't see any, so let's see. So would either you or Angie like to lead the discussion, or do you want me to just go line by line, and if people have questions, you answer them?
Chair, I'll take your lead. We'll just go along with whatever works best for the group.
Okay. All right, so looking at page 7, starting at the top, beginning balance, $3,775,615. Seeing the blue there, how that income comes in. Any questions on that section? Okay, moving on. So property taxes, Angie did address this earlier, that there's a $721,416 in the proposed budget, and the rest of that income shows back on the debt service because it goes there first. So we'll get to that in a moment. Property tax from the prior year, $60,000. That's the average of the prior years. The unsegregated tax interest and the interest revenues, that's what the city receives after all budgeted interest revenue is received in Fund 210. Dan, is your hand up new, or do you forget to take it down?
Just forgot. Sorry.
That's okay. I was looking down. I just wanted to make sure. Okay. Next section, rental incomes currently at 0, miscellaneous revenues at 10, and loan principal repayment of $27,937. So that's the recreation and also the blue building.
Right, that's revenues coming in for those two loans.
Yeah. And then the loan interest repayment shows the Commodore because that is an interest only loan at the moment. So that shows it's coming in with $2,824 plus an interest payment on the blue building of $6,182. All right, so that's your revenues. Any questions on revenues? Okay. Now we go into contractual services. Alice, why don't you talk a little bit more about these? I think people might have some more specific questions about them, or at least you can run through them and give them the highlights so they at least know what questions to ask.
Sure, happy to do so. We have a contractual relationship with Wasco County and their GIS services. That's geographic information services. That's our mapping. And there are several groups in the city that contribute to that, and Urban Renewal pays 1/6 of that expense, and that share is $2,000. It's a good service that we receive, and anyway, it's $2,000, and I think $2,000 well spent. So Campbell Phillips Legal Services, we prior years have had an in-house attorney. We now have a contract with our attorney, Jonathan Cara. who is with the Campbell Phillips Legal Service or firm. So that is to cover that expense when it previously would have been in the contract admin services below. The ArcGIS, that pays for a subscription for their renewal program for one of our seats for the GIS programs that we have inside the house, inside the city hall, to get access to the data that's provided by the county. Let's see, occasionally we might need to, if we have big meetings or something, we might need to rent a facility. So that's the $1,000 that's below it. Do you want me to move into the contract admin services? That is, we spoke about that earlier. That's what we project we might need. And as Angie said earlier, our finance director Wilson said, we do we keep good records and we do timesheets every month. And I noticed that when I started, there was an uptick because I'm spending more time on the renewal, getting to know all of the projects, but we think that cost is going to go up, so we projected a little higher. Okay, auditing services, this is an annual requirement. We do piggyback with the same firm, typically with the city, and this is the cost, the projected cost for the annual audit. But it's a separate audit that's done specifically for our agency. Okay.
So I'm gonna pause here. Does anyone have questions on those first 3 sections before we get too far away from anything you were thinking about asking?
Darcy, I'd like to just add in on the auditing services that this year we are going out for RFP, and we have not got the RFP back yet until Monday. So this is just an estimated number of what the audit would be for urban renewal.
Okay, thank you.
And Chair, the next.
Any other questions?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I got a lag or something. Go ahead, Alice.
Oh, Ms. Coburn has a question, so you better answer her first.
Yep. Sorry, Ms. Coburn.
No, I was just comparing our budget from last year to this year. And so I just wanted to point out, maybe it's obvious to everybody, but as you mentioned, Alice, the legal was in contract admin services last year. So now it's moved into contractual, which is why contractual's gone up. But really, in addition to the part, I think legal was about 31,000 last year, I think was the line item detail with what was in the budget. So we're taking that one out, but then adding another 40. So that's, I mean, I think seemed to me there's quite a bit of money that is in that contract admin services that wasn't there prior.
It's just the anticipation that we'll be spending more time
right
with staff on all of the various projects. I'm going to be leaning more heavily on, I've already done it with the recreation building, on our attorney and others. So.
But I guess what I was trying to point out was if you take the 84,000 we budgeted last year and you take out the attorney services of 31, that's about 50. If you compare the 50 to 120, it's a much larger jump than just the 80 to 120. So just want to make sure we're comparing apples and apples here.
That's an excellent point. Thanks for doing that, Stacy. Any other questions? Okay. Head and go back now, Alice.
Okay. The Urban Renewal Consulting, that group, and I spoke about it a little bit earlier. We do an annual report. We're required to do an annual report, and I contracted that out this year with someone who does them for most of the state and for urban renewal agencies. So that costs a little bit under $1,000, at least it did this year. As I mentioned earlier on the real estate development project consultant, that would really be someone with real estate development expertise, but also someone who can be a project manager and really help lead us through the demolition, but also the redevelopment of the Tony's building site, and also provide advice on any other projects that we might have that pop up during the year, such as the rec building, finishing that, and anything else that comes up as new opportunities. Legal consultant, that is there and as a placeholder, and legal consultant, why would we need a different legal consultant? There are specialized attorneys out there, and I've worked with them in other agencies that have a specific expertise in urban renewal. And sometimes we need to call on them to help us. And in one case this year, in fact, we met with bond counsel. We had to, in order to get some answers on our urban renewal financial analysis, we had to spend some of those funds on bond counsel. Bond counsel, they have a pretty high hourly rate. So in any event, we always set aside a little bit for that. And then we have a capital project management consultant, and that is for the First Street project. And that's all for that. It's I anticipate we'll spend that whole amount this year.
Any questions on the consultant fees? Okay. Go ahead with engineering.
So now we're going to move on to page 8. Right at the top of page 8 is the engineering services. I kept this in here. I actually think that we will, there's been nothing charged. I don't think anything's been charged this year to that line. I believe that's the case. I'm looking over at Angie. But that is to really cover the coordination work we do with Public Works to pay for their time that they spend on this project. So that's what that's there for. I anticipate that we will spend those dollars, particularly as we get into the bid documents and finishing up the engineering. So that will happen, excuse me, a little bit this year. But also, as we move into construction, Public Works will be playing a very important role and likely will be helping us with the inspection services associated with this project. So that's in there in a just in case scenario. I don't really know at this point how much of that will be spent, but I'd like to have it there. Property, any questions about that one? Okay. Property rehab. This is we pay the interest on the loans for the Honnold, the Gayer, and then if we have some other projects that might want to take advantage of this incentive, we have $60,000 set aside for other projects that might come in this year. And I hope we get some more because I think it could be a nice incentive if with the right opportunity. And I know there were at least one member of this group had some questions about our incentive programs, and I'm happy, and I said, please bring them up. So I'm happy to answer those right now or at another time. It might have been Ms. Hakerl or Ms. Ferrer.
Go ahead and bring your questions up right now as long as we're all thinking about this, please.
I actually spent some time with Alice yesterday and got my questions answered. I don't remember if I asked a specific question about those projects. Sorry.
Okay, I think the question was, if I remember it right, it might have been committee member Ferrer. The question was, what incentive programs do you have today? So what do we offer today? And I didn't have my brochure in front of me like I do now, but we have a property rehab grant and a loan program. And we have a historic design and restoration program where we work hand in hand with our Design Landmarks Commission to promote and help fund facade improvements on these historic buildings. So we've done a number of those. I think Gayer building, I know we've given some funds to the Granada and some others, many others that I probably will I better not say too many of those because I won't know the answer. But so the intent is to preserve those historic buildings and those resources. And then the things that are eligible would be replacement, repair, alteration of the exterior facade, awnings, cornices, decorative details, painting and cleaning, exterior painting, cleaning, masonry repair, sign repair, rehab of second stories of the interior of the second story. And then there are some other improvements that if they're done in conjunction with other elements, they can be, but there are some ineligible improvements as well that if you have questions, I can tell you what those are. There's another grant that's available. This would be another grouping, and that is the Architectural and Engineering Services Grant. And that would cover, looking at this, would cover some of those initial soft costs when some of that architectural work is done at the very beginning of projects. So this would provide a one-time grant of up to $3,000. And then we have redevelopment of unused and underused property program. And I don't know much about this one. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, but this one also is done in conjunction with the Historic Landmarks Commission. We have a redevelopment and restoration loan interest subsidy program, which are some that we already have in place that we've talked about. And we have some metrics here that determine how much we'll fund. Anyway, so that's all laid out here. And Civic Improvements Grant Program, we have that as well. We have a blighted property demolition loan program. So we have some good existing, we have some good infrastructure in place with our incentives. We just haven't marketed them very widely in the last few years. So I'll be wanting to spend some time on this year, not only learning them, our existing programs, but checking them against what do other agencies do to make sure that they line up with the agency board's goals for investment in their renewal area.
This is Debbie Ferrer, and what I appreciate that information. It wasn't my question either. And I did have some other questions answered by you yesterday, but that wasn't one of them. But thank you for that information, because it was good to hear it. But it must have been someone else's question.
One of you said, and rightly so, that we don't promote this very well or even at all on our website, and that's right. And I want to fix that. So I appreciate the comment, and we'll work on that as part of this work.
So that might have been me.
Okay. All right.
And just for a little historical context, Alice, we had to put a pause on those because we had some budgeting changes, pretty major stuff going on with one of the properties, whether or not we were going to be getting the lump sum loan payment or not. And so we did intentionally, the board voted to put a pause on it. So that's why there's nothing for a couple of years.
Okay. Great.
Okay.
All right. So what is reflected here is the anticipated payment amounts for each of those. You'll see in the blue the line item detail, but we anticipate paying interest subsidies for 51.3 and 14.5, and then we hope to have some more projects to fund. And moving into, do you want me to keep going, Chair? The water, sewer, natural gas.
Yes, and I'll watch for hands.
Okay. Buildings and grounds. I will speak to the electric and building and grounds. We did some this fiscal year in recent months in the fall. We worked on some repairs to the Tony's building. So we spent some of this line. And we did that because the Gorge Fitness Hub, Mr. Cassidy, was gracious enough to tell us, hey, in order to stop some of the damage, you better do these repairs now to the roof. And we had some electrical work that we needed to do to ensure safety. So we did that work this fall. And then the electric, it was identified also by Mr. Cassidy. I appreciated that with the freeze thaw conditions, we need to keep the heat on in that building. The furnace is completely shot. So we have some portable heaters in there. My goodness, that is expensive. Heating that building up to 50 degrees with portable heaters it's very inefficient and quite costly. And I've been a little surprised at how much our monthly bills are, but we're paying those, and I guess that'll be an expense that we won't have to pay when the demolition occurs. So let's see. Property taxes. I may need your help on this one, Angie. This is to pay for the Commodore 2. We have some properties that are along First Street behind the Last Stop Saloon, across the alley and behind that front out on First Street, that we pay the property tax on those. Is that right, Angie? Did I get that right? Okay, so that's that amount.
That's correct.
Property liability insurance. This is the projected amount to pay insurance on those assets that we currently own, and that would include the rec building and Tony's building and Blue building as well. Okay. Postage, just
I have
some,
a question about that, Alice.
oh,
The chair. So I thought that the property and liability insurance, that we were no longer carrying that on the rec building because CIS, county insurance services, or city county insurance services deemed that they were not going to provide that, and that's why we had that lump sum to give over to the recreation for their repairs.
that's correct. That's correct. And we are in the process right now of getting that all squared up so that we're absolutely covered on everything. And we are covered today. Mr. Carpenter is covering the building, but we need to make sure that we're following our agreement and that we have the coverage that we need. So I think that's true, that the rec building is completely covered by Mr. Carpenter and Ms. McQuaid currently today. So I think the question would be, do we still need $6,500? And we did check that number, Angie, if I'm correct. And I believe that is the projected amount of what we still need to cover. Am I right on that, Angie?
That compared to what we've been paying, that's what we've been paying on it annually, somewhere around that number. I wasn't aware of what you guys just spoke of. So if we don't have to pay the property taxes on that, then we won't be spending part of that this next year. We'll only be covering 2 of them.
This would be the actual.
And I was not taxes, but the insurance.
Oh, the insurance. I'm sorry. This is talking with Daniel on the insurance, our HR director, and he also covers the insurance, that this would be the policy amount for the next year. And the policy came out at the end of March, and that was the projections.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Postage, legal notices, those are in there. There is some coverage for travel, food, lodging for staff. If I've not taken advantage of that since I've been here out of this budget, but it's there in the event that we need. It's important for us to stay involved with statewide activities. There is AORA, stands for the Association of Oregon Redevelopment Agencies, and that's an important group to stay involved with because they provide statewide lobbying at the state level if there are legislative changes and so forth with the program. And it's a place for staff members to share ideas as well, so we can keep up with best practices, particularly in things like incentives. Let's see, training. So there's travel, food, lodging, and training and conferences. Those two kind of go hand in hand. Membership dues and subscriptions. Those I just spoke about, AORA and OEDA. OEDA stands for Oregon Economic Development Association. We're a member of that organization as well. And then there is a requirement, and we cover the fees and the costs associated with, and I'm looking at Angie for the Ethics Commission. There are some, maybe you can help me out, Angie. I think there are some disclosure forms, or there's something we have to do with the Ethics Commission. Can you help me with that one?
I'm not sure.
Okay, I'm not sure either, but I do know that particularly with like the Planning Commission and other boards and commissions, we have to cover some costs there. Does anyone have can enlighten me more on that? No? Okay. Office supplies, books, periodicals, assets. There's nothing proposed to be funded with that. These are things that cost more than $15,000 or $5,000. Capital projects, let's move on to that if there are no other questions. The capital projects, what we're anticipating, what you'll see in the detail there is the Tony's building potential capital expenses. That would be the cost of demolition. Like I mentioned, the cost estimate we've received for the demo of that building is the cost. It's been quoted to me fairly recently that it's anywhere between $200,000 and $250,000. That does not include some important costs. That does not include the environmental work that I've talked about, the asbestos abatement and the storage tank removal and or mitigation of the storage tank and any leakage that's occurred. So we're bumping up that number in anticipation of it being pretty consistent with that amount. If it costs a little bit more, I'll be coming to the board to talk about that. And then we made a transfer and it's $50,000. We have a fund, we have some funds that were set aside for the First Street project. So that project is pretty well funded now. And we did some very recent cost estimates with the team at ODOT and our design consultant and project that we might need $50,000 more. So I threw it in there just because I want to keep up with that. As time passes, unfortunately, if you have a lot of stops and starts in projects and don't get them done, it ends up costing more. So that's our projection at this point on what we would need to spend on that project. And then the next category is capital projects, and it's called opportunity driven projects. So really what we do here is this is what's left over in our fund balance. So it is available for opportunities that come up during the year. We don't know what those are yet, but if, for instance, the board identifies that they want to do something with the Federal Street Plaza, for instance, or they want to move forward with the redevelopment and there is some more cost associated with redeveloping the Tony's building site after demolition, then that's there would be an opportunity to tap into these funds to promote some of those projects and get those moving. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I think that might be it for this fund.
So on that last one, that's just funds that are currently available?
Undefined. And
just sitting in the account ready if the board just decides to, okay.
Yep, and I wouldn't spend them without talking to the board, obviously.
Madam Chair, Kramer, on the Fund 18, First Street, do we have all of the agreements in place with all the appropriate entities and we're all set forward? Or are those funds for, as it's stated, for right-of-way acquisitions? Or do we still have some work to do there on the First Street project? Thank you.
Yes, we do have some more work to do. There will be an agreement coming forward to, actually, I think the IGA has to come to the city council because that's the entity. But anyway, I will be getting concurrence from the board shortly, but there will be a $200,000 agreement that where we will be paying ODOT to conduct or fulfill those right-of-way services for this project. And the projected amount is $200,000 at this point. So I'll be bringing that to the board at the next meeting, and that'll be next week. So you'll have a chance to look at that and give a recommendation to the city council who will be entering in. They'll look at it in May, and we want to get that moving forward. But as of today, we have all the agreements are in place. As this thing progresses, though, this project progresses, we will need to adjust some. For instance, the design consultant has told us that he will need, or that KPFF will need some more funds in the right-of-way line item. So we'll need to do some calibrating from here and there, but we're moving along and I feel pretty confident we have most everything in place to keep moving.
Thank you, Director Cannon.
Are there any other questions?
The questions were answered. Thank you.
Yes, so it doesn't look like anybody else is putting up their hand or making a move to speak. So on page 10 is the debt service portion of the budget. Does anyone have questions? I guess they would be for Angie on this section. Okay. Okay, so seeing none, Commissioner Kramer had asked about opening up for public comment before we deliberated and voted. Do we have any members of the public who would like to comment? All right, so we will move on to our discussion. I don't think we're going to need another meeting. I think we're going to be able to handle this tonight. So if there's no more discussion, I'd like a motion to approve the budget. If there is discussion, now's the time.
I move approval of the budget as presented.
I second.
Mr. Nelson, who seconded? I'm sorry.
Barcott.
Joe.
Joe Barcott.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Arcott. So I have a motion to approve the budget as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
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 This is
Laughlin, aye.
Forrest. Aye.
Excuse me, Chair Long Curtis, who made the motion?
Mm-hmm.
Doug Nelson.
Douglas Nelson.
Thank you.
And you know what, with the 19 of us, do you want to do a roll call vote for your records, or what's easiest for you, Paula?
I just need the people that don't have their video on to give me their name and their vote. Otherwise, I don't have it.
Oh, okay, thank you.
This is Forrest. Aye.
Thank you.
Andy Hakerl, aye.
Thank you.
Laughlin, aye.
I'm set now. Thank you.
Dan
Any
Richardson, aye.
Opposed?
Kramer opposed.
Okay. So is that 2 opposed and
I'm sorry,
17 and
who else was opposed? Kramer and
Richardson, were you opposed, or it just was a lag and you meant to say yes? It was confusing.
It was a lag. I vote aye.
okay, so
Okay.
1 opposed.
Okay. All right, so the motion passes and the budget is ready to go on to City Council. I'd like to thank everyone for their time and energy. Budget committees do take a lot of work ahead of time, reading through all the numbers and trying to understand what everything means. And it looks like at least a few of you reached out to Director Cannon in order to get some information ahead of time, and I do appreciate that. So thank you for your service, and I'll end this meeting. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Right.